So tell me, Sam, about your, thank you so much. Tell me about your journey, your experience, and who is Sam all about, and how you achieved so much great success in your life. Beginning with that, we'll go forward. Over to you, Sam.
Okay, well, let me start by saying thank you for having me on. It's a real pleasure. You know, we've been seeing each other in the industry for a little while now, and it's great to be a part of what you're doing. Obviously, your company as well, now the podcast. So, look, I'm currently sitting as a regional director for a multinational FM company called ATALIAN. I've been working with ATALIAN Global Services for a couple of years now, really helping them set up in India. So my journey to get to there was that I've predominantly been in kind of an entrepreneurial business development kind of career. So I left high school and I didn't really know what I was going to do. This is in Brisbane in Australia. I went to one of the really great public high school, and I didn't really know what I wanted to do. So I went to America and I taught tennis at a summer camp because I thought I wanted to be a teacher. And I really love children and working with kids. And what it taught me was I really enjoy that, but I don't have the patience for that kind of thing. So then I kind of shifted gears and got into a business career. So I started studying a business and commerce degree at university. And then at the same time, I was working full time for an IT company and I was doing my study at night. So that gave me a really great experience of like, hey, whatever you learn, you can go and apply the next day. So I really became interested in education as well because of that, because it wasn't like just all books and, you know, tests. It was, you learn some theory about business or about marketing or sales or something. And then the next day you can test it on a customer or test it in some graphics design thing that I used to make up. So I really loved that. And it was really hands-on, so it was a lot of fun. And then I actually started my own business out of that as a consulting firm. And I was working with small companies in Australia where they were looking for, you know, a part-time resource because they were too small to be able to afford someone. And I could work for 4 or 5 different businesses. And I really enjoyed that because it was fast-paced, lots of different experiences. And no coincidence, being someone who likes the fast pace and the different things going on, that led me to India, where the pace of business is so fast and there's so much energy. So I got the chance to come to India to work on a consulting engagement with a small B school in Hyderabad, and I just loved it. Immediately I was like, I want to be here. I can see everybody's moving quickly. There's a lot of energy in doing business. There's new ideas. There's people like, I sat on a call earlier this morning and we kind of talked about the difference between doing business in Australia or Europe, where if you want to change something or you want to try something new, it takes forever. Like you have to move everybody in line and you have to get everybody's agreement. Whereas in India, the business is so dynamic that everybody jumps in. So I just love that about India, and everyone wants to try something new and grow. So that was really cool. And that's what got me interested in India. And then I think I was working for my own family company. So my mother and her father started up a training company, a vocational training institute in Australia about 35 years ago, as just them and one of my mum's friends. And I really, I worked alongside them and really enjoyed the idea of this small business startup kind of mentality. And, you know, that's what got me here. We started up the same business in India. So I worked about 5 years with different state governments, working with them on building capability in their ITIs and the polytechnics and the different training institutes that they had. Worked with the central government on the Skill India program that Prime Minister Modi came up with, and also just a whole number of different programs. So the beautiful thing was I got to see so much of India, and it just, every time I went to a new place like the Northeast or Kerala or anywhere, I was like, wow, this is different to the last place, and there's something totally new and something interesting to find out. So I just loved it here. So I kind of went through that, and then I was fortunate that ATALIAN came and they found me and they said, look, you started up your own business. It went well. Come and help us start up. And so for the past 2 years, I've been working with them, helping them establish from scratch. You know, we took a contract on day one, we implemented 620 staff in one go for a housekeeping contract. And then, you know, slowly we've been working on getting all the right policies, getting all the right things in place here, which has been really fun because it's that change and the fast pace. So that's sort of how I got to here. And then, you know, I'm just learning. I'm a baby in the facility management space now because it's my first time in this industry.
Wonderful,
But
yeah.
I love it. You know, it's another place where you get to try things. People might think of cleaning or security guards as a simple job, but you can bring technology in, or you can do different things in different ways and make it a really interesting kind of fun thing. And that's where my passion is that kind of changing things, doing things a little more innovatively. And that's obviously one area where we connected because, you know, you come in from the technology side as well. So
Yes.
that's a little bit about me.
Wonderful, wonderful, Sam. Appreciated. You have done a lot in your life and a great, great ladder of success. And now here you are where you have achieved so much, so great. And you definitely be a great inspiration for people like us and people who look up to, hey, I want to become like Sam, right? So wonderful. Coming forward, like you mentioned in your conversation that you work from scratch. So my question to you, because a lot of people are afraid to work from scratch, right? So that's one mentality.
Yep.
For example, any startup, any work, they really don't want to start from scratch. So like you have the experience and exposure of working from scratch and the challenges you must have faced, right? So how you think that, and a message to everybody, like if you start working from scratch, what are the challenges? How you overcome those, and what are the mental pressures you might have faced throughout? So tell me, with your journey, like how you overcome those and what are the challenges you face in your life. Over to you.
Yeah, I think probably before I touch on the challenges, one of the things that I love about doing something like starting it from scratch and starting up a business and doing something new is that you get to own the outcome. You're responsible and you get to have like a very, you get to put your fingerprints all over whatever is the end result. So that's a really positive motivation for me because I like that people can, you know, you can influence how it happens in a day-to-day basis, and then at the end of it, you can look at the end result and say it's something good. And you know, you might need to be critical about some aspects and you know, improve some things. But at the end of the day, whatever you create, if you start from scratch, you get to feel proud about whatever you created. So that's, you know, whatever challenges come along the way, that's really the motivator, is that in 5 years, in 2 years, whatever your time frame you're thinking, you get to look back and say, hey, I did all of this. So, you know, I decided that this thing could work and I tried this and it ended up with this result. And that's really the motivator. So you always come across challenges. I think I'm very honest in the sense that, you know, if I look at, say, ATALIAN, it's a big company. So there's always a chance that, you know, you have a set way of doing things and you have to change that a little bit because, you know, whatever is working in Singapore or in France or in US, it needs to be slightly different for India or Indonesia or, you know, Africa, wherever you are. So, you know, that's a challenge, is saying, well, what is the global standard, or what is the SOP or the process that the company is doing, and how do we mold it to the local scenario? And that's a big thing in India because it's different here than it is even in, you know, nearby places. How it happens in India is different to China, is different to Europe, Middle East, America. So that's a challenge. Whatever you're starting up, you have to look at it and make sure it makes sense in that market. And then I think probably the biggest challenge is when you're starting up, you don't have any brand name. You might have an understanding, or you might come from outside with a brand name out there, but you have to establish your own credibility. And in a market like India, where everybody is based on trust, it's a trust-based kind of economy. People need to be sure that you can do whatever it is you promise them and not, you know, do something wrong or not deliver. So you have to spend a lot of time building trust and building relationships so that you have good credibility. And so that comes down to your people skills. I think that, you know, you need to be able to communicate, you need to be upfront and honest. And then in the background, you have that idea that, hey, if I can do this and do it right in 2 years or 5 years, I can look back and think, hey, I made these decisions, I made these actions, and it resulted in this beautiful thing that turned out great. So, you know, I think that's the number one challenge, is building your credibility. If you're coming in from scratch, nobody knows you. You're not Uber with a brand name and a reputation and everything. You're starting from zero. So you've got to build that up. That's the first thing.
Perfect, perfect. So Sam, what you think that, say for example, a person X need to make their credibility, what are the steps according to you to go forward and make a credibility? Because people out there ask a lot of questions regarding, you know, leadership skills, personality skills, and lot many things. Like soft skills is very important today's date, right? How you speak, how you present yourself, and a very great humble nature is also very important, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so what do you think, according to you, say for example, a young person has some goals and you know they look up to people like you. There are leaders out there world and they really want to become like you. But then how from the scratch or from the step one, how they create a credibility for their own self? So over to you, Sam, if you can take up on your journey. Yeah.
Well, look, you're very kind with your words about people looking to me, but obviously a lot of people also look to you as well, because you've got your own credibility and everything in what you've been able to achieve.
Yes.
So I think you only get credibility with time. You have to put the time and effort in. It's one thing. You have to have the soft skills. You talked about soft skills. That's an area when I was with the training company, my own company. We were doing a lot of training on soft skills, whether it was for someone who would turn out to be a welder or an IT professional, or even, you know, a retail person, where they have different levels of communication in their job, but they still have to have soft skills. They have to work in a team and all those sort of things. So that's critical, because the first part is you've got to tell people what you plan to do, and you have to have confidence to be able to speak. And that's not a language thing. It's not about in English or in Hindi or anything. It's just clearly being able to communicate. What is your passion? But then second, you have to be willing to put the time in to do the work. So if you say, you know, here I'm a brand new company or a brand new idea, you get one guy who's willing to give you a shot, then you have to deliver. Because if you don't put the time and effort in, if you don't, you know, put 100% of your time, if you're thinking about other things, if you've got a little second thing happening over on the side, it means you're not concentrating enough. So if you put your full effort in, then I think you come out. That's how you build credibility, one step at a time. You say to someone, I do this, they give you a bit of trust, you deliver for them, then they'll keep coming back to you and saying, hey, I know you will do what you said you do, and I've told my friend, and you know, I'm happy to tell other people if you want a reference or anything. So it's first the soft skills, the communication, but then being willing to put in the hard effort to actually do what you said you would do. That's how you build credibility.
Perfect, perfect. That's really insightful, and I'm sure a lot of people will be benefited out of it. Now, you sound like you mentioned that you have a great past career in terms of having your own company. Then you joined Atlassian, and then you started from scratch and make that happen, right? What's the success today? So, for people out there who probably listen to you and get inspired, what is your take when you talk about, you know, like inspiration? That's very important. Say for example, Diksha has to do something and I don't have an inspiration. Maybe I do have today because I heard Sam is so inspiring, but then tomorrow I'll go back and say, oh, I don't have any inspiration to work longer, right? For people like those, what do you think? Because you have that compassion towards working for your own business, and then you're helping other people, delivering a certain, you know, productivity and helping them from scratch. So you're the best person to guide those people out there, especially youth. Youth generation is important because they are the next future. So what's your take when you talk about inspiration? What's your inspiration, Sam? Over to you.
I love this question. It's a really great question, because I think there's two parts of it. You know, people talk about like a role model, and then there's also another type of inspiration as well. So I think a role model is someone who gives you your ethics and your morals and the way you want to work.
Yeah.
And for me, I was extremely fortunate because I had a mother and a grandfather who worked together in a business, who were really, really inspirational in that they taught me about how to start up something myself. my father as well, I was extremely fortunate to have two amazing parents, and I'm so thankful for that, because not everybody gets that opportunity. So that's something that was a privilege for me. And my dad taught me, how much he dedicated hard work towards his family and all of those sort of things. So these are all like one type of inspiration, in that they were my role model. And then I learned, about business, and I learned about how to sell and how to deliver, how to manage projects. When I was at university, I was working for an IT company in Australia called Bay Technologies, and I was the most junior guy in the team, and I was in the sales team. And the CEO of that company, it was a small company, maybe 30 people, so I had always the chance to talk to the CEO, the project director, all of the key guys were always talking to me, and they were really inspiration in terms of, like, I saw how hard he dedicated himself to the business, and I saw how hard the project manager worked. And he also taught me, like, how to manage a project, how to engage with the stakeholder, how to, conduct a business meeting. So all of these business skills that you need to succeed, I was very fortunate to get these from someone. And I think I try and revisit that. I don't get the chance now, because I'm, so far away from them, to really interact with them very often, because they're still in Australia. But, there's more people that you meet along your way. And I think you have to be like a sponge and just soak up everything that comes to you. So whenever you find something, I took from Mark, that CEO, and Craig, who was the project director, I took a whole bunch of things from them. And I remember Craig said to me, we were in a meeting and he was actually leaving the organization, and we did a circle of like what we had learned from Craig. And one lady said, well, I didn't really work from Craig. I didn't learn much from him, because she didn't really have a great mindset. She was very good at her job, but she didn't have a great attitude. And Craig's response was, it doesn't matter who you are or where you are in the organization, I feel I can always learn something from you. So I go nowadays to our project sites when it's safe and possible, and I see a cleaner or a supervisor. And just because I sit at a director level doesn't mean I can't learn from him. In some way, I can see how he's presenting himself or applying himself in the job. So some people think you've got to get your inspiration from people who are bigger than you, but you can also look around and see it everywhere. So I think that's the thing. I was very fortunate with my mum being such an entrepreneur herself, and she was recognised very highly in Australia for that, with many accolades. And she broke down a lot of barriers, because she was a woman in business and that gave me a real inspiration to make sure that I was working with strong people, strong women, and taking their guidance. So, but I think it's critical when you're in business, you don't just look at like, who is my boss or my boss's boss? I need to look up to them. You can learn from everybody. And that was a real lesson for me on how to take inspiration and just keep revisiting. Like, even if you learn something once, you'll forget it if you don't try and relearn it again. So if you have any good ideas, keep them written down and go back to them every so often. That helps me a lot.
Wonderful, wonderful, Sam. I'm sure people will love about the clarification that you mentioned about like how and from where we get the inspiration, not only the ideal side of that, okay, there is a great cricketer out there, I want to become like him, but then you look around and appreciate people who are there working with you day and night, maybe your mom, maybe your dad, maybe your peer group, maybe your CEO, or maybe anybody, or maybe a manager, right? So I think that's brilliant to search and look up for inspiration if you really want to go forward and make a success in your life. Going ahead, Sam, let's talk about the challenges that you're facing in the lockdown, and then how you as a leader, inculcated your feedback, suggestions from the market, and then you tried a solution for solving things up. So what are the challenges, how you took a chance to solve that up? So over to you, Sam.
Yeah, so look, I think one of the biggest challenges that I've seen, personally, I've felt this, but I've also seen this with my team, is you get disconnected. We're more connected in one way, that we're talking to people all the time and we jump from call to call to call, or have a meeting on Zoom or Skype or whatever. But you're not getting the same energy you do as when you meet someone face to face, because it's a different thing. You don't read the body language. Some people are very extroverted and they get all their energy from social interaction. And that for so long now has been cut off, and it's hopefully coming back a little bit. But what I see is that that's a critical thing. You need to really think about your mental health. You need to think, some people think of it as a bit of a dirty word in terms of like, I don't want to consider my mental health. I don't want to look at that. Some people might think it's a weak trait or something, but it's nothing like that for me. I've struggled in different times throughout the last 6 months in just adapting my own work-life balance. I live, my wife and I live together in a beautiful house. We've got very fortunate in our living conditions, but still there'll be times where mentally I feel like I need to get out and need to do something, and it's not possible because the lockdown or because of restrictions or whatever. So it's about understanding what will re-energize you. I take a lot of energy from personal time. I enjoy interacting with people, but I am also quite introverted in terms of where I restore my personal energy. So I go out and I meet people or whatever before coronavirus, and then I need to be in the hotel room alone to just relax, or come home and just spend 15, 20 minutes by myself to get back. So it's important to know that about yourself. And then also in the workplace, like your colleagues as well. I see my staff, or see my colleagues in the ATALIAN, some of them have struggled a lot because they didn't have the same family life as some of the others. So some of them are very comfortable to work from home because it cuts down on the travel, it's a safer thing. But then some of them are really struggling because they don't live in an ideal condition. Maybe they were sharing an accommodation in a hostel or something. So it's about, adjusting and working with them, because, that mental health thing can be extremely draining. And I've had 2 or 3 weeks where I just did struggle. And so it was about remembering you need just a little alone time. Maybe if you're craving to go outside, walk in my colony here, do little things like that. That's really helped me, because that's been the biggest challenge, is missing that interaction and also getting some more energy for myself mentally.
Perfect. Like, we missed you face to face. Hence the reason we're here on, online media. Anyways, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. Moving ahead, Sam, like you talked about many things, inspiration, how we should make a life balance, and how we should think about like ourselves. We'd also have a me time where we probably think about ourselves, and there are life pressure, there are work pressure. So like, one question I would love to ask you, that you are in a very prestigious position right now, right? You're in a leadership position right now. So how you manage work-life balance and work pressure in lockdown and before lockdown? So what are the changes before, and what are the challenges that you faced in lockdown? And the second question I would appreciate you to answer is how you manage the pressure. Say, for example, there are deadlines to be made, and you have no resources, or maybe there are people who really don't up for like working very passionately. So how you maintain that sphere in your in your office? Yeah, over to you, Sam.
Yeah, so when it comes to work-life balance, I used to be, and I still am a little bit, but I always was somebody who would be thinking until 1 a.m. in the morning, and having these thoughts keep me awake, and I really struggled to work out how to put that aside when you need to get sleep and you need to focus on, interacting with your family and doing these sort of things, and not being stuck on your phone all the time, solving problems. I really struggle with that. So I've worked on trying to be able to, dedicate a set time, have a night mode on my phone, so I'm not getting the blinking lights, and just give me that piece of time where I know I can talk with my wife and spend time with her, and, not bringing my phone to the dinner table where n number of calls will come in while I'm meant to be talking to her and recapping the day and talking about our plans or whatever. So I try and take little measures like that, that really set a defined time. It's very difficult because people will always want to get you at any hour, but I try and set some clear boundaries. And I think the other thing is, I'm sitting here at home at the moment, and I'm dressed in work clothes. And I was reading an article early on, and it was talking about how that can change your mindset. So, you know, if you're working from home and you're sitting there with the t-shirt and shorts on and whatever, you end up with the t-shirt and shorts mentality. You know, it works for some people, but for me, putting on a suit or putting on a business shirt and a tie, even if I'm sitting at home at my work desk, it just ticks my brain over. And then it also lets me have a routine of getting unchanged at whatever time in the afternoon after my last meeting. And that gives me a sense of, okay, just like when you used to come home, you unchanged, you put on some clothes for home, and you're more comfortable in that. And that kind of just changes your mentality. I read this article and I just start trying and it works. You know, if you haven't, that kind of, those little tricks like that, and just keeping your phone away at a certain time. You know, one of the hard things in the facility management business is, even if I'm not working, I have thousands of staff who are working, because security and cleaning and technical maintenance, they're 24/7 jobs. So we have 3 shifts in most of our sites. So a problem can happen. I think I'm very fortunate in my position. I do have a great team who I have a lot of trust in, and whether it's the operations or the sales or anybody in India here, and also the guys that support me in the regional team, in these guys I trust a lot, and I know they can actually handle the job. My role is more as to guide them, whereas when it comes to solving an issue with chemicals or something on a site level, I know these guys can handle it because they've got 10, 20 years of experience doing that. So I put a lot of trust in them, and I also put a lot of faith that they know the thing to do, but they know they can come to me for guidance. If they want to know how to communicate it with the customer, if they want to know how to deal between the different teams, communicate, you know, there might be a communication gap between our operations and our finance team, and I can bridge that by, you know, bringing them together and communicating on both their behalf. So I haven't, I know a lot of people have struggled with the work pressures during lockdown. In a way, I'm very fortunate that my team is so strong and I trust them, because it's made it, they've run things very smoothly. You know, they've been willing to extend themselves. We've just started a new factory, which we're taking care of in Faridabad. And it's been a huge month over the past month, and these guys have put in all their efforts. So it's meant that I didn't have to be there in a time where maybe traveling to Delhi and back is not so advisable. It's a time where you know, these guys are willing to put in the effort, and they were able to solve all the problems, and I was just there to help guide them on, you know, sometimes we saw this in another place, maybe we could try this option, and just give them some motivation like that. So no, I'm very lucky, but I like to set some clear times and have some little tricks like changing my clothes to get me in a different mindset.
Wonderful, wonderful. Changing clothes is changing mindsets. Wonderful, wonderful. That's actually appreciated, because a lot of people just said like, okay, that's my home place and I just wear something. But then you said very correct that whenever you are at workplace, no matter you're at home or maybe a co-working space or maybe anywhere of the world, but you should wear your attire. I mean, you should dress to impress. Like people say, dress to impress. So you should wear exactly the right kind of dress where you feel confident and you really feel like working out.
Yeah, and it's not to suggest that everybody goes out and buys a suit and tie, because it's not appropriate. In some, you know, a lot of IT companies, they prefer you to dress a little more casually. But just have a mindset of like, that type of dress helps me, especially if you're working from home, because it just gives you that mentality of, okay, now I'm in that mindset. And then when I change over to these type of clothes, I'm releasing myself of those stresses, even if it's just to have some dinner and talk to your family or whatever.
Okay, wonderful, wonderful. Second last question, and then I have a last question for you. But then second last question is, what do you think that when this lockdown gets over and everybody come back to normalcy, if everybody come back to normalcy after a year, according to you, then what are the measures you will be taking as a leader? And what do you think, like, will that impact people at the workplace, or like how your, because everybody's taking some sort of, what do you call that, SOPs, like procedures, the standard operating procedures in
Yep.
lockdown, and after lockdown, definitely you should change it. So what are the changes that you must be taking care in terms of heading back to normalcy? Then how it impacts is the workspace. So that's my second last question to you. Yeah, over to you.
Okay. So look, I think we need to put a high value in, if we look at just people in general and people's lives, we need to put a high value on giving people personal time and giving them, you know, making sure that they're taking enough leave, that they're mentally and physically regenerated once they come back to the office. So not putting people under such pressure that they don't take any leave for a year or anything. That's a big thing. I'm planning to take a short holiday soon because I just want to, you know, reset my mindset. So I think that's going to be critical. Even when we get back, you know, there'll be pressures, and there's always pressures on all companies to, you know, make up for if there's been any downturn or anything like that. But importantly, I think we need to make sure that people are having enough time for themselves. And on that path, I think if I look at like the office environment, whether it's my own or our clients, I think a mixture of work and home gives them that balance. So I like the idea, and this was something I read early on, of making the office more of a collaboration space, making the office a place where you go to do meetings, not to sit at your desk so much, but to handle specific meetings, you know, collaborate with the team, come up with new ideas, because I think we're all still struggling to figure out how to do that on the Zoom calls. You know, we have great Zoom calls or Skype calls, but once you get face-to-face, there's more collaboration and people kind of bounce ideas off each other really effectively. So I think what I hope and what I see happening is that the office becomes this more collaborative environment. You know, we have an office where, you know, it's more meeting rooms than say cubicles and cabins, and people are able to go in with the express purpose of, you know, this and this need to be resolved. We need to sit down and meet. We need to talk to the client on this, or we need to have a huddle to talk about this specific thing. And now we're going to do a strategy workshop. So we all come together to do that. And then we also give the staff a little bit of flexibility to, you know, work from home. You know, some people in all countries, but you see this in India a lot. If they're taking public transport, it's not just one bus, but 2 or 3 buses. And it can be a long journey. If people are traveling an hour or more, save them that time, give them 2 hours back in their day by giving them 1 or 2 days where they don't have to travel to and from work. So I think it needs to be a blend. We'll get back to the office, but we need to kind of adjust and take advantage of some of the good things that we've learnt in lockdown, and then also and give people a little bit more space to themselves, and then really use the time in the office to drive productivity, to get people collaborating, and you know, to think of new ideas. I think because that's the best thing about when I go into the office, is that, you know, I can sit down and talk to people. We can bounce ideas off each other. So I think that's what I see for like an office environment. It's going to be different for other workplaces, but I think that's a critical thing to give people a bit more balance and to use the office more effectively.
Wonderful, wonderful, son. I'm sure people will love working from home, and after normalcy, people will say, okay, can you give me a home work from home? I'm sure that's going to happen. Yeah. So that's
a balance though. We need to have both.
Sure. That's where a lot of leaders will understand also, like work from home is also important somewhat.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Okay, so last question to you, which I generally ask to all my guests, is none other than like the kind of, you know, the point that you give to all the youth out there, sitting out there, maybe Indian, maybe foreigner, however we say that. But what do you say, like, if I be Sam, so what do you think that, you know, that motivates you, that inspire you every day and night? You know, I have this point, okay, I have to do this because I'm very good at it and I want to change the world. So one point, what Sam will bring a change to the world, and what's your point for all the youth out there? And my question, why I'm saying that to you, it should not be generic, but it should be general towards 2 age groups. First age group is when you talk about very young people, which is under 30, and rest is above 30. I'll tell you why I'm asking this, because you are the great living example of that particular segment, where you have achieved a lot in your young age, and now you're going forward to the other age, right? So you know the struggles, you know the pain, you know the compassion towards how people will come together, and you know the sense of gratitude that you should give back to the society, right? So what happened that many young people lose the faith, lose like, okay, I have nothing to wait, and I don't want to work anymore. Let's go back to my same old school work, and 9 to 5, 9 to 5, whatever. So that's one. If I have a passion, how should I appreciate my passion? No matter my family is against me, my parents are against me, my colleagues are against me, but how I'm going to listen to myself. So that's first question. Under 30, above 30, of course, you have a lot of responsibility, families, you must be working somewhere, you are a part of an organization. At that point, how you manage stuff. So Sam, I know that's a lot of questions, but then I know you're the best person to answer all. Yeah.
Thank you. Look, it is, what I would say is what I learned,
yes,
like, as I talked about earlier, is you look at who's all around you, and you can take inspiration from all those people. And I had two very different parents when it came to their idea about what is work. So my mother was extremely passionate about work. She loved education. So she started an education company, and she was training people and helping them get jobs and really creating amazing outcomes for them to get their career started. So she thought, that's my passion, and I'll get into that and work in that. So then every hour that she's at her office or doing her job, she's actually doing what she's passionate about. So that's one thing, and that's I think everybody aspires to that. People like Steve Jobs and all of these great leaders that we've seen in our life, they all have that idea of like, whatever you're passionate about, make that your job, is kind of the saying. So my mother did that, whereas my father was, he was very passionate about bicycling, like racing on, in all of these kind of bike riding adventures that he used to do. And he still does now, even he's over 60 years old, he's still in Brisbane, he rides his bike all the time. But he worked out that if I go and do my job, and he's very, very good at his job, so he learned how to do that job and did that well. But the reason he did that was so that he could have time and do his job very well, so that he could have time to spend cycling and spending time with family, because that's what he was passionate about. But he wasn't someone who was so obsessed with their job that they needed to make whatever their passion is their job. He saw, I can do this, I can earn a good living for my family and raise a family and get to spend time with them by doing this job, and then I get to spend my leisure time either with my family or doing what I'm passionate about in cycling. And I think people, when you're young, you probably chase that, like my mother did, you chase that idea of let's make my job my passion. And so I think I would encourage everybody to do that. I mean, that's one of the things I liked, this idea of starting something new. I identified a few areas where I could start my own business. I tried that out. Sometimes it didn't work. Some businesses started well, some businesses didn't, back in Australia. So I think you try that when you're young, and you really, you put all your effort into it. Don't let anything be 10% onto the side of, some other job or whatever. You put all your effort into it. And then, some people that won't work, and then you work out what is your passion. If it's playing cricket, then let's do a job that gives you the opportunity to play cricket outside of the job, or join a cricket team, join a social team, so that you can play on Sunday or on weeknights when you finish your work, you do a night game or something like that. So that's what I saw from my parents, and so that's always been my mentality, is that